Good afternoon. This is Global Dossier, Power, Truth, and Politics. Today is April the 27th of 2025. Here is my friend Salim Daher, and we will try to bring you some issues, events that happened during the week with a little Venezuelan twist for you in order to get it to your friends that not all of them speak Spanish and try to make it look from another angle than the regular you see on the media. So, hello, Salim.
Always an incredible pleasure being here with you, my dear friend, and ready to bring our audience just an incredible amount of information from the perspective of two Venezuelan immigrants to the United States of America.
So, I think the big deal this week is President Bukele's offer to the corrupt government in Venezuela, where he is placing a bet on Mr. Big Mustache. Okay? So this guy, he's telling, I want to change 101, 200 and something of the people that I have under arrest at the Zakat in El Salvador and change it for the same amount of political prisoners that you have in Venezuela. And that's a great bargain because for these charlatans, Mr. Bukele is raising the bet to see what they will do, especially when you see that every week there are more people that go to jail without any due process, without respecting the rule of law that it doesn't exist in Venezuela.
Yes, and for those of you who might not know, there is a very controversial and, quite frankly, completely horrible and um, you cannot possibly imagine how terrible the situation is with the political prisoners in Venezuela. Hundreds have been imprisoned over the decades that the Chavez and Maduro socialist communist dictatorship has been in power, and they're not only being imprisoned, but you think they might be held in humane conditions like some first world prison, but no, these are Venezuelan prisons, some of the toughest, most vicious, horrible, and unsanitary, dangerous prisons in the world, where they are subject to torture, famine, and all other kinds of physical and psychological damage inflicted upon them just because they think differently. So, what President Bukele of El Salvador is saying is, well, Mr. Stalin wannabe, because of his mustache, you know, if you're really so inclined to have your fellow countrymen back, who are gang members, rapists, assassins, thieves, thugs, I propose a trade. You send me the 253 political prisoners that you have in your uh, dungeons, which, mind you, is not all, there's probably more, and I'll send you all 253 members of TDA that I have here. What do you say? To which I think he said he wouldn't do it, right?
Yeah, basically, they caught him in the act. He was trying to bluff, but Mr. Bukele let him to be what it is. It's a clown regime. But the other relevant news that I think is being on the carpet this week is the actions by Senator Rick Scott, who made a gathering with Venezuelan political pundits that do all they can for the freedom of Venezuela. They gathered in Tampa. It was a great meeting with Mr. Scott. And then yesterday, he went to the Kennedy School of Government at Harvard University, and he is like the main figure that keeps pounding the drum of the pressure on this thick mustache guy regime, and especially because the Trump administration is trying to pressure in all the fields that they can. They are pressuring in the oil, especially with the third party sanctions to anybody who wishes to buy oil from the Venezuelan thuggish government. And also because they are behind the bank movements of these illegal sales. Also, the US Navy and the Pentagon is following the ghost fleet of tankers that they trade illegal oil, either Venezuelan, Iranian, and Russian, and they're behind that. And the other term is that they're looking for a whole bunch of bad hombres that are doing bad things in the US, either by TDA or because they are affiliates of the Venezuelan regime.
Yes, and I think it's incredibly valuable that Rick Scott is being heard and is being seen as the ally he's always been. He's been an ally for the Venezuelan people, and he's been someone who uh, has always been there to denounce what the Maduro regime has done to every single person who has at any point been in dissent of their uh, of their politics. And it's not only politics in Venezuela. It's not something similar to the United States, where you have two competing factions, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, and they're competing for votes and support of the American people. This is a dictatorship that is um, not only uh, in the sense violating human rights, not allowing for free and open and fair election, but it's a drug trafficking cartel that has embedded itself into a government. It's sequestered the institutions, turned it against its people and anyone who dare oppose them, and they're effectively using their country as their own small fiefdom.
But in the meanwhile, one of the terrible news this week for the Venezuelans is that the Citgo auction is getting close to the end. That means that the Venezuelan people will lose like the biggest asset we have in order to rebuild the country, because it's a fresh money cash cow Venezuelan has in Citgo. But what we see now is that the judge in Delaware has like three factions betting for Citgo. One is the Venezuelan factions that is in two sides. One with the intern government and one with the communist regime, but they seem to be playing the same hand in the same bicycle. And the other one is like 18 different companies that they want to liquidate the company in order to cash the debts that the country left for them. And that was part of the legacy of this dead dude from Barinas and this actual thick mustache guy. So when we see that, it's terrible that we don't have who to defend the Venezuelan assets. That's why we keep on pounding, telling Mrs. Machado and Mr. Gonzalez that you have to show a team of Venezuelan on the game to see what it's going to be. And there's the only way that is left is politics. And basically, the Venezuelan people would like that Mrs. Machado and Mr. Gonzalez they send letters to the Department of Energy, the OFAC, and the Department of State and Department of the Department of the Treasury in the U.S. and to Mr. Trump and request that please hold the auction of Citgo and make a commitment to the people that has the debt that the country will pay everything, but losing like the main cash cow that Venezuela has will be terrible for the reconstruction of Venezuela.
I think it's a very sad thing that we're seeing the liquidation of Citgo. That eventually it's just the money is going in a very interwoven and complex web of corporations and overseas uh, offshore accounts to eventually ending up in the hands of the government again. I think that's probably what we all know, right? And it's very sad that this is happening because I think we all wish that this was different. That ultimately we could see a a free Venezuela, a Venezuela that would have uh, uh, a an oil industry that would benefit not only its people, but that would create jobs so that the entire world could see Venezuela as the energetic and business hub that it could be. So yeah, that's a very sad piece of news, and I really wish that we see change in the near future.
And talking about petroleum, I think for humanity is that Mr. RFK, Mr. Robert Francis Kennedy, he passed guidelines this week where the food industry has to withdraw the price for come from petroleum. And that is great because basically what Mr. Kennedy is saying is that in the US and many parts of the world, in order to give colors to the food, the additives and the dyes they come from petroleum. As basically we are eating poison, and he said that the food industry have to withdraw all that, and that it's a great news for humanity because if it works in the US, it will work for the rest of the world, and we have to thank him and Mr. Trump for that this week. And the other item that I think we have to express is how the nuclear program is going on in Iran. This week, we had the meetings of the technical teams, but it's on its way. Mr. Trump gave a declaration on Friday where he said that he, in case the Iranians don't take the plan to disarm the nuclear program, he is the one who will take the the spear in the attack because Iran won't be allowed to have nuclear weapons.
Absolutely.
And in order of that, early this morning was a big explosion at the port of Hamarbas. Wait, yeah, in Iran, where they blew away the stash of sodium perchlorate that is part of the fuel for the intercontinental missiles. So that is a great news for humanity because I don't know who did it because nobody has said who is responsible, if it was by uh, corruption or mishandling of the materials in that port, or if it was uh, an Israeli operation, or if it was an American operation. That hasn't shown so far, but the explosion is huge, and that means that the fuel for the missiles is off, but the negotiations keep going on because what it's real is that these Shiites that belong to Mr. Khamenei cannot have nuclear weapons.
Yes, it is of vital importance that the Iranian regime does not, under any circumstances, have access to nuclear weapons. It would be an incredible, uh, an incredibly dangerous world if uh, if we allowed the Iranian regime to have nuclear weapons. And it goes beyond just the fact that the more countries have nuclear capabilities, of course, the more uh, the more likely a conflict would be. But the Iranian regime is hell bent on imposing their Islamic Sharia or Caliphate in the rest of the world, and they will not stop at anything if they have a nuclear weapon to launch an attack to anyone they deem as an enemy. So I think it's of vital importance that this deal goes through, and I think people are not being as they're not realizing how important these negotiations truly are, and the fact that Donald Trump is leading these negotiations speaks volumes about how he truly wants to help the entire world uh, be a world of peace, a place where we all can coexist and can create possibly a better economic climate for absolutely everyone.
Yeah, but the thing is, it was a terrible news. It's in the port of Bandar Abbas in Iran, where for now it says that more than 40 people are dead and there's in excess of 800 wounded. So it's a terrible news, but if it was a mishandling of the chemicals that they were storing, it's terrible. But still, humanity cannot let that the nuclear plant go on. And the other terrible news that we see this week is a letter sent by the former chancellor of Colombia, where he publicly showed a letter where he tells President Petro that Colombia doesn't deserve a drug junkie, a regular drunk, and especially that the actual Colombian chancellor is basically uh, the sugar girl of Mr. Petro. And that's terrible for a nice, big, and respectable country like Colombia to have this dude running their country, a guy who runs his mouth and basically he most of the time is under the influence of some uncontrolled substances or scotch, and that is terrible.
Yes, I really have no words for that. I think that uh, anything that has involved the head of state openly embarrassing themselves with drugs or alcohol should never be a point of even discussion. And I think it's sad that this is happening to Colombia. Such great people, the Colombian people, and I sincerely wish that this will be one more a day less in his presidency, and that we might have some kind of better president in the future. And it's really, I think it's the most important thing, truly.
But other the news that we see this week is that there's 2 weeks after President Milei in Argentina uh, took away the clamp on the dollar uh, trading. And that has been great news, even though there's a whole bunch of liberals and communist economists that they are betting on the failures of Mr. Milei's formula. And what we're seeing is that he's been using the theories of the Austrian School of Economics and it's working. So the good thing is that basically now the Argentinian model can be the benchmark for other countries that need to resolve the inflation and the devaluation of their currency, and in order to make it just a dollar economy. And that's the role model. And we hope that Mrs. Machado and Mr. Gonzalez send their economical teams to talk to the Argentinian team to see how can we improve in the Venezuelan changes that we need, because Mrs. Machado is making a lot of offers, but we need the details, because the devil is in the details. And Venezuela, in order to fix something that is being broken, we have to remind that the Venezuelan currency, when these people got into office 26 years ago, it was a 500 bolivars for each dollar. Now it's like 100 trillion bolivars for each dollar. Let me say again, it's a 1 and 18 zeros. That's how destructive it's been, this communist regime. It doesn't matter if they change the name of the currency and take away zeros, but that's the reality. We went from 400 to 1 and 18 zeros on the volume. That's how terrible it's been for the country. And we hope that the new economical team for Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Machado talk to the experts that are the Argentina now, because not because I say it, it's because the proof is in the pudding.
Yes, I think one other thing we could also talk about is that uh, we saw the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia allegedly take a little bump in the road, because I think they misinterpreted Secretary Rubio's remarks of saying, well, if he essentially said, hey, if there's no deal here, we can't really continue being in this negotiation, the U.S. would leave. So the media outlets started saying, "Oh, the negotiations are teetering on the edge of a knife. What can we do?" But what he really was saying is that if we don't come into an agreement, there's no point in being here. But I think we would probably see a deal come through very soon in the Ukraine Russia war, which, because there's not enough bullets, there's not enough lives. No one wishes to see this war continue, and I think it's very sad that some people are antagonizing this 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 effort on the part of the Trump administration to create a more peaceful world.
Well, basically, what it seems very positive of that is that yesterday, at the funeral of Pope Francis at the St. Peter's Cathedral, the Basilica, Mr. Trump got a long meeting of 17 minutes with Mr. Zelensky. And he told Volodymyr, I don't know what he told him. I will bet all the money in my pocket to see what was the talking about. But the real thing is that Mr. Trump is telling Mr. Putin, hey, Vlad, stop it, man. We need peace. Stop for the killing. There's more than 3,000 Ukrainians and Russians that die every week, and that cannot keep going on. That is a terrible thing. And for now, we are expecting that the negotiations with Mr. Steve Witkoff go, hand in hand. It seems that Ukraine and Russia have accepted the conditions for the truce and for the peace. But basically, yesterday, Mr. Trump told Volodymyr, hey, you have to sign the mines, my friend, the rare earth mines, because I'm not going to keep on helping you. That Vlad wants to take the whole country, and the only one that can stop that is the US, not the Europeans. It's the US. But you have to sign the rare earths agreement, because I'm not going to do it for free. That was the last clown that was in the White House. That especially, he was yesterday at the funeral and was taking selfies with every other people that showed to him. But the guy definitely is lost. It's a shame that America has to stand 4 years of this dude. It's terrible. He's responsible for letting the Russians get into Ukraine. He's responsible to let the money get to the Iranians so they could attack Israel. So he's responsible for so many things. But after yesterday, when we saw Mr. Trump talking to Zelensky, that's a good thing because they haven't spoken personally since he screwed up in the White House, where you saw Vice President Vance and Secretary of State Rubio basically whip Mr. Zelensky's butt. But yesterday, in those few minutes, we think it will get to a good port. If not, because Russia doesn't want to get in line with the agreement. So Mr. Trump, he still has some tricks in his bag so he can, really punish the Russian economy for the next day. So we will see how it goes.
So you're talking about Biden in the funeral of Pope Francis.
Yeah, he was taking selfies with every other people I show there. The guy's a real shame.
Yeah, and I think if some people fail to realize that this economic disaster we're living in is because of the $3 trillion that Biden printed during his presidency, taking a huge gamble on the economy, creating artificial demand through more dollars in circulation, and that eventually the Fed had to grind this to a halt by increasing the federal funds rate, and then we saw what we're now experiencing a less than stellar job market, an economy that was in shambles due to inflation. But even then, Donald Trump, with just a few months in office, he's lowered the price of gas, lowered the price of some important food items like eggs. And I think he's taking steps that are necessary to reshape the global order in favor of the American consumer, the American worker, and the American entrepreneur or business owner, so that this is an economy that works for the Americans first and not for only the globalist world order that started after World War II. And I think some people fail to see the ramifications of how and the true origin of how this economic debacle affected all of us.
Well, talking about globalists, the good news is that Pope Francis died on Monday, and on Monday, Klaus Schwab, the clown of the World Economic Forum, was kicked out of office. That dude that wants everybody to eat bugs and you don't have nothing but you will be free, he's out of office. And this week, there's a whole bunch of leaks and whistleblowers saying that this guy was a real thug, a piece of work. And that's a good news for humanity this week. And the other good news that is coming in the US is that Mr. Steve Hilton is going to run for the primary to be the candidate of the GOP in California. That is actually the fourth biggest economy in the world, but that state is being run by irresponsible people like Mr. Newsom, his aunt, and a whole bunch of bad men like Schiff and Kamala and Karen Bass in Los Angeles. So we hope that Mr. Steve Hilton grow some spine and put some order in California. There used to be a big, very huge Republican enclave. Even you have to remember that Mr. Reagan was a governor of California, and then after the elections were handled by Smartmatic, the GOP couldn't win again a governor in California. So we hope that that changes. And especially, there's a whole bunch of Venezuelans that know how to deal with the elections by the tricks of Smartmatic and Sequoia
And Dominion.
And those experts, we hope they can help Mr. Hilton for the next run. And I also wanted to hear from you, what are the elections that are coming this next November? Because we have to remember to our audience that in the United States, every first Tuesday of November, there are elections every year. The thing is that every 4 years, there's an election for president. Every 2 years, there's an election for Congress. There's an election for 30% of the Senate. But every year, there's an election of something. Governors, mayors, sheriffs, school districts, and so on. So I wanted to hear.
Well, a few of the close ones we have is, for example, the city of Miami. We have a general municipal election, of course, just electing our mayor for the city of Miami. We have elections for the city of Orlando City Council as well. And then statewide, we have a governor of New Jersey, as well as in Virginia. We have, I believe, Senate elections in Georgia, the state of Georgia, very important as well, because that will decide the Senate majority and the congressional majority that Donald Trump has to continue pushing his America First agenda. And I think people are always more excited, of course, to vote in the presidential election. And they go out and vote not only for the president, but anyone who's on the ticket at that time. But there's significantly lower turnout historically for elections that don't involve the president, since they're not as visible. But I think it's always important to participate. It's always important for everyone to stay informed. And I think everyone should go out there right now and research what offices are being elected currently where I live.
On your districts.
In my district, in my congressional district, my state legislature, my governor, my mayor, my senator.
Yeah, because the thing is, Venezuelans, we run from our country because we lost freedom and we lost the democracy. Then you're coming to the United States, that is the biggest or the longest democracy in the world, because the biggest one is in India, but the longest one in the world. But you have to participate, because if you don't participate, then you cannot complain of what is happening to the government. And that's why we try to illustrate the audience. One other thing is that two things. I would like if you can subscribe to my Patreon account with a little contribution, no more than a coffee, that you get some special content. I'm going to be bringing some issues that are relative to the Venezuelan reality of the last 100 years, and I'll be recording some programs with the Oracle, and you will see that it's worth it. The other thing is that this program gets to you in the name of our sponsors, that are Mr. Tu Asesor Gustavo, for all the insurance that you might need in the US. And if you need to publish your book, there's Jurado Grupo Editorial, where they will take you all the way from the idea that you have until you have your book and you can sell it, and they will take you all the way in the process. And if you want to eat a delicious pavlova cake, gluten-free, don't forget to connect with Pavlova Express here in the city of Miami. That's the best dessert you can get. And if you are in San Cristobal, remember to go to El Mondongo del Chinchorro de la Carabobo con Carrera 15. No se lo vaya a perder. Eso es una delicia. I have to say it in Spanish because there's no word for mondongo in English. So the other item that I think is important to establish in this conversation is that the big fight on this year is to crush social communism. And that's why Mr. Trump is doing all this fight to save the Western civilization. And part of that will be in the conclave that starts in Rome from Tuesday and ahead, because this last pope was some kind of a progressive. I wish him well, but for the Catholic flock, we expect to get a more conservative pope, because that's why we need in order to stop the advance of communism, especially the Chinese, even though they don't have such a great news lately, because there are two news that I think is important, is that the Trump tariffs are the Chinese economy more than it seems to be hurting the American economy. The second one is that there's been movements in the Chinese army that doesn't seem very well with Mr. Xi, because the guy went out to visit like 15 days ago, went to Vietnam and other countries in Southeast Asia, and it seems that there were hotheads that wanted to do a coup to the guy. But we'll see how it develops in the next days.
Yes, and mind you, we're not saying here that we want somebody to lose money on their 401ks or their retirement accounts or anything like that. What we're saying is that the plan that Donald Trump has with tariffs and what he's outlined as using it as a tactic for leverage in the international arena is so that American products produced by American companies can have an equal playing field in other markets where these countries are taxing American products from American companies in their country while they're able to sell in this economy and in this market for nearly no tariffs or very little. All he did was say, hey, if you're taxing me this, I'll tax you this. And we don't want this to happen because this is the strongest market and the strongest economy in the world. We better sit down and negotiate and work out a deal so that there's an equality of conditions for you and for me, while at the same time providing incentives for the big companies throughout the world and the large businesses such as Apple, for example, can create jobs in the long term here in the United States.
Well, my friends, I think this is it for this week, and we hope you enjoy it and subscribe to the account, raise your finger, and I hope you enjoy these ideas of today, April the 27th. We hope to see you next week. Thanks again, my friend Salim.
I am very grateful to be here as well, my friend, and thank you so much for this wonderful and enjoyable podcast. We certainly hope that you enjoy it. Leave your comments, subscribe, and hit that like button, and see you soon in another edition of Global Dossier next week.
Bye bye.
Y este programa llega a nombre de nuestros distinguidos anunciantes. No deje de suscribirse a la cuenta, denle a la campanita, póngale la mano y además si puede envíe un super chat. A todos se les agradece.
Trompa Trompa al que quiera, trompa a todo el mundo, trompa a todo el mundo, trompa al que quiera.